Okay. I've got a few questions in my mind, but I'm going to not say them or ask them. Have we got some roving microphones? Is that correct? There's a microphone by there. So I'm going to throw it straight open to the floor. So has anyone got any comments or questions, please? There's one over here. Thank you. Can you say who it's for?
Thank you. Yeah, this is just a question for Oliver. I'm interested to know the locations in which you shot each film, why you chose them.
The field, the cotton field is in a place called Kızıltepe, which is in southeast Turkey on the border with Syria, as is the cotton factory, which is just up the road, and the road building is also in the same neighborhood, same area. Kind of practical reasons. I mean, once I had this structure of it being related to making my daily shower possible, I then thought about agriculture. I thought about low wages and got onto agriculture, and then where I could go to shoot cotton, and this was cotton picking, which was in southeast Turkey. And then the next was is the Carpenter, which is in Liverpool, where I'm originally from. But again, it was kind of close to home. I think for this one, maybe there's something more romantic about this shot of somebody working with wood. Maybe that's something more romantic about this. I don't know why. And then the next one was in Berlin. And the last of the shortest one, the CEO, is found footage, and it's from the States. Does that answer your question?
Helen Klipinski in the middle.
Hi, thanks for all the presentations. This is a question for Ellie, because you just touched at the end of your presentation on the fact that you're meant to be a recovering data collector, but in fact you presented this annual report, and I wondered if you could speak a little bit more on self-destructive tendencies and how this might relate to a wider ecology of planetary, on a planetary scale as well. Or I don't know if this is kind of covered in your book, because I know it talks about mental health, but I haven't had a chance to see it.
It's not covered in the book, because I just came to realise it, I suppose, last year when I did that piece, the progress report, and I do feel a bit guilty that I've still got all of that. It's actually not an annual report; it's a decade. It's reflecting on a whole decade of work, but yeah. So it was when I made that. I guess my brain likes seeing data visualizations. I don't know whether that's because I'm a bit like a computer, or whether that's just a human way of processing information and understanding it. So it was only when I was confronted back by that graph, which again I just made in Excel really quickly, that I realised, shit, this is really not sustainable, this trajectory. And I guess, so my thinking over the last year is more about thinking about, I guess, how even somebody like me who, over the last 5 years, I've been trying to remove as many contradictions from my life as possible. Which is quite difficult, but it's been one of my missions. And then to be confronted back with that, though, actually it's all very well to go on about how terrible capitalism is and how ridiculous it is that all the mainstream politicians, aren't even, that they're still all talking about growth and about the need for increasing GDP year on year, and not seeing like the actual, you know, the only realistic alternative is a no growth economy, and then realizing that actually those pressures. I mean, I just started working in academia as well, which I think a lot of these anxieties might come from, because first time in my life I've actually had a salary and a contract, and somebody saying that I am meant to jump through all these like academic hoops and, you know, progress at the greasy pole of academia and get my research published. Oh, I just forgot this is being streamed live. Whoops.
Okay, you're looking for a new job.
Maybe. But no, you need to speak truth to these things, because those pressures exist, and those pressures to progress. And I guess I wonder what progress actually is, because really when I see people who've progressed, I see my parents are probably watching as well, and I just think, well, they've just got fatter and they've just got richer, and actually I don't I don't really want to do either of those things, you know? Like, how do I resist these pressures? So maybe like being confronted with that data is making me think, well, actually I need to resist as much as possible these pressures to progress and be happy with what I've got and keep it as real as possible.
I'm going to jump in, and before Rob asks a question, I think there was another one over there as well. Was there?
Where?
Did someone want to ask a question by there? But I'm going to ask, in a way, this is back to the floor, but is there anything that we can take which is educative as to what artists do through process and gesture that can really inform how society moves forward? Like when I'm watching you in documenting your eating, like with two teenage daughters who document every moment of their life through Snapchat, even when they're almost even when they're sleeping, that there is no distinction whatsoever between 8, 8, 8. It's gone, and yet there is a very real issue in terms of people needing to eat and have shelter to sleep under. So, what can we take from whether it's Tuching or these artists? Maybe there's some suggestions on the floor as to what we can be doing to move, in a sense, to a different kind of economy of life. Because I think that's what you're suggesting and you're searching for in the way that you continue. Okay, let's Rob have a go.
Yeah.
Wait. No, it's not about that.
I know, capture it all. I was just looking up the UK Green Party manifesto, actually, just now. And I remember when I first came to Berlin, which was in the 70s, there was a lot of talk about the workless society and the limits to growth. And now the same ideas come back, the citizen's income. Can anybody comment on the idea that you just get a fixed amount for every member of society of, I think, £71, and you can create your own work programs? What do you think of that, the citizen's income? This is a proposal, a real proposal, and it's been slammed by the right-wing press, by the way, in the UK for being a loony policy.
Anyone want to take that?
Well,
do you want to do it?
It's the goal for everyone, basically.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I read about this a couple of days ago, and actually it's maybe not that kind of a radical idea. It's just saying, you know, society is better when we kind of put the basics in place for everyone, so that there's welfare support, whether that's healthcare, public transport, other kinds of things that we need. And it's just kind of putting that in monetary terms, isn't it? You know, have that in the form of money and then go spot. But that does kind of get people's backs up, doesn't it? Yeah.
Maybe, you know, I wrote 3 words down: occupation, unemployment, and being unwaged. So that, of course, you know, we can all of us probably here can see ways in which we can be self-sustaining as a group of people. And, you know, if there was a limited amount of food on the table, we'd probably share it. really, how do you transfer, just in terms of the notion of the work ethic, which is still deep in many, many artists? You know, I don't know, how many people in the room consider themselves to be sort of creative practitioners in some way? Okay. Now, can I ask you, are you doing it because you love doing it, or you're doing it to earn your living? No, he's yeah. So, you know, in a sense, the question is really that part of the paradox of being an artist or being in the arts is that it's truly vocational. So we're our worst enemies, but of course we can also kind of signpost new ways in which society can discover itself. But in terms of the detachment of where we are, you know, it's like, if you kind of, you know, this is a fantastic festival, but look around. So that's also part of our job, isn't it? Through making the art and presenting the art, creating opportunity for artists to make new work. And this is going to lead me on to my next question, which is perhaps, and this is it's a really simple question actually for all three of you. And I've had this conversation with you all independently at some level. But have you got a preferred method of payment or a preferred method of engagement as an artist? So the range could be that I pay you by the hour, yeah, and, you know, so it's like £7.60 an hour, minimum wage or whatever. Or would you rather that you make something and I buy it? Or would you rather have the money up front? Yeah, can you, in a way, can you just talk in simple terms about the commissioning process or the purchasing process?
For me personally, I hate it when people pay me up front. That becomes like an albatross around my neck. And there's the pressure to get the thing done. I prefer to do a job for someone, then get paid, and I know I don't have to do anything else after that. But generally as well, I have an issue with the idea of making things to sell and just then ascribing a random value to that. And I think that's a big strange problem that the art world has, is that there's a sort of need to mystify and, you know, what art is and what value it has, and actually that can be really unfair both for the artist and the other person who's paying it. And I find it much simpler to kind of say, actually, my time has a value, my work has a value, and I can point to a document which helps us to agree on what that value should be. So whatever I make, at least we can agree that there's a fair price for my time.
Yeah, I'm very lucky because I've got a salary now, and I like that, just coming in every month, not having to worry about it. I've only had it for 2 years. But before that, I like the citizens' basic income idea. I'm voting for that because, I mean, I normally will get paid a flat fee. I guess I would get a little bit before and a little bit after doing a big project. And but that's only if I'm doing an exhibition or something. I continue to work regardless of whether I'm being paid. You know, like, I'm always writing in my little notebooks. Like, and I think, I mean, I don't know whether I can answer this question just in very simple terms, but I think that's kind of what's different about our creative work is the disconnect between wage and labour. You know, the fact that it's not because we're being paid that we keep going. We keep going because there's other forces or other motivations. So yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't feel I have I don't know. It's hard because I think we don't have the choice to make. I think the art world hasn't, for me, caught up with how, or the funding in the art world and money in the art world hasn't caught up with the art that that a lot of artists have been making. So I think traditionally artists made objects, paintings and sculptures, and then they could be sold. Or perhaps they were commissioned to make these objects. But for, I don't know, 2-3 generations, a lot of artists are making fewer objects, perhaps performances, installations, things that don't have they're much more difficult to sell. But that's happened at the same time that we've had a kind of super rich developer in the world who like buying. It's almost like a kudos to buy the most immaterial. Who can buy the most pointless artwork?
Maybe it's not just kudos. Maybe it's about a kind of pure abstraction. Yeah, is that I know that we've got some philosophers in the room at the back. I also know that we've got people in the room who don't come from the so-called Western rich part of the country. So this is also contextual too, isn't it? So we can go back further into our history and recognise that rich people commissioned extremely good work, and that they wanted to create a new system of value because they had some high belief. So it's also about consents and value, isn't it? So if I asked everyone to put their hand up and vote today for whether Sam's work's more valuable than Oliver's, I'm not going to ask you to do it. But if I did, and I said if you weren't going to do it, I'd shoot you all. If you were kind of pushed to the point we have to make a decision over one thing being of more value than another, which of course we do in real time in our lives, because we have to value our own time, that in a sense within the art world we're all afforded a level of hospitality, because it's how much can you afford? How much time can I afford to have a chat with someone and find out what they think? Because I'm not busy feeding a child or doing something else. So anyway, I'm trying to pick at this notion of how value is created. And I don't think it's just about kudos.
Yeah, what I was trying to get at is that I think, so for me as exhibiting, it's what I mean by not catching up is that sometimes taking part in contemporary art and showing visual arts in institutions, there's this kind of sometimes unspoken background idea that maybe you'll make it big and sell it for a lot of money one day. And then you have another show and they say, well, yeah, but maybe it'll be one day. Maybe. So even asking me, do you want to sell it for lots of money? It's like, I don't have that. It's irrelevant. No one's going to buy it. So just pay me for my work. Yeah. So it's quite hard to be in an institution where today, like where everyone around me is paid to be here, and I'm paid to be here right now. But I had to take part in this show. I had to kind of take time off my work, hanging pictures in one place in Berlin, to cycle down to the HKW to talk to the curators and the technicians about how my work should be shown. But I wasn't paid fairly for this, because that's not. I don't know why that is. And the only reason I can think of is because there's this kind of idea that maybe you'll sell it one day. And I know this goes all the way through the relationship that institutions have with visual artists. So in theatre, it's almost as if theatre will be funded through selling signed photographs of actors or something, rather than just paying them for being on stage.
Can we have? Thank you. That's who I wanted to ask a question, and he's read my mind.
Sorry.
Well, at your very nice presentations, you showed that you deal with labor, time, wages, salaries, and all this kind of stuff. Very nice, individually presented, each one. But I didn't see you talking about something that is strongly related to labor, strike. Why?
We heard someone talking about quitting. Yeah. Does anyone know about the art strike? Yeah. Would someone like to just say a little bit about art strike? Do you want to go on strike? He nearly striked on me at one stage. He thought about it. Yeah. So that in terms of the negotiation of the organizer, curator with the artist, as my wife says, the content maker. I'm just the content maker. So that, of course, within hierarchies and power structures, I'm fortunate that I'm employed. I actually have a job, even though there's precarity about my job because I'm the director. But in terms of the sort of condition of negotiation between collectively making a decision that something is worth doing and the withdrawal of labour to make a statement, that this has actually been used, of course, within the history of contemporary art.
Can I? I've got something to say. Yeah, I've got something to say about that. I guess it relates to, I mean, I have got a slide actually where from inside my book where it mentions Stuart Holmes' art strike from 1990, where it's in the section about quantity versus quality, and this idea, I guess it relates to what I was saying about resisting pressures to produce more and more. But when I think about work and what role work plays in my life, actually the most depressed times of my life are when I've been on holiday. I remember a particular holiday when I went to Corfu with a load of my school friends for 2 weeks, and it was hell. It was hell. I woke up and they were all down sitting by the pool, and I was sitting in the apartment going, ah, I can't wait to get home to my normal life. And I guess, so I think I'm very self-conscious about, the way that I spend my time and the effect that it has on my mind. And this is why that guy who was in that Hungarian film last night has become my new hero. And that's why I do so much swimming, because every morning I know that my best days are the days where I stick to my routine. And I go for my swim, and then I come home and I have my regulation breakfast. And then I go to my studio, and I don't even turn my laptop on. I just read and I think. And I guess that's not really being productive in the contemporary sense at all. And then I try to stick to the rule where I don't check my emails until lunchtime. And then it all just descends into a horrible mess of being sat in front of my computer. But that's a lot more social in a way, that I can just be stuck in a room in the middle of nowhere and it feels like I'm communicating with people through this device. But yeah, so I think work for artists particularly, if you're going to strike, then you have to be careful what the consequences of stopping might be for you personally.
I've been a freelancer for nearly 10 years, so I've become sort of always aware of when I have room to kind of turn down something, and sort of what I then define to, where I draw the line, what's going to be that criteria. And I think it's important that you're constantly trying to work that out, and it's quite liberating actually. So I'm not going to do that job because I don't need to, or I don't think it's the right kind of work. I don't think they're the right kind of person to work for. But it's not a fixed thing, and it's a very individual thing, and that's part of the problem that artists sort of exist, in a network, but really kind of they're fighting those battles individually. But it's something that's an important discussion to be having. And I've recently, last year, the Artists Union England, as an organisation, that came about to kind of make a framework so people could address these things collectively. So, but I only recently signed up to that because I'm still in the mode of thinking that I try and fight these battles individually. I find myself just constantly put myself in a point where I am exploiting myself or contradicting myself. But it'll be interesting to see what comes through that organisation, actually, whether that changes my habits or the ability of other artists to work together to maybe go on strike.
Casper?
Would it be okay to bring the discussion for a moment back to your pieces again? I'm not trying to find a good curve here, but I feel since our discussion since at least Sam and Ellie have kind of a self-reflective built-in mode in their work that make us so much think about how you produce, you document your production basically in your work. And that brings now all the discussion to an never-ending and very complex discussion on artist labor, payments, commodity, etc. But I felt like we were taking off a little bit too quick from your pieces. And I want to ask the three of you a question about form. And this is related to grid structures, to lined up monitor screens, to spreadsheets, and to the idea that by engaging deeply with labor, it's also a question on, were there ever ideas really to jump off this grid, so to speak? Because all the tools are related clearly to labor, are related to day-to-day office jobs. I don't have to even mention Excel, but even a lined up of monitors and even a digital clear structure of the punch card, which you thematize, even comes really from industrialization, living by the clock, punch card, and so forth. But I think for everybody that has done a really monotonous, horrible 9-to-5 job, where basically your life, let's say a factory job, in fact, where your life has been erased, it is so crazy that only the occurrences that are unusual are being remembered, and therefore creating actually a quite lively, bumpy memory. So, with other words, labor and grid structures, to me, would be so interesting to also investigate, to jump off that grid. I mean, in a way, in Ellie's case, she just literally jumped off that grid by quitting it. But more now related to form, my question is, where this occurred, did that strategies, were you for important, or did it ever even occur how much grid then is really related in your work, which might be in the outcome an quite annoying element, being so conform with certain strategies also to display, for instance, labor and hours and so forth, and work in general.
I was just going to say we shouldn't assume that that working in a factory is an unpleasant experience, or that clocking on and clocking off is just about the control of the factory owner either. Because I know plenty of people that have got jobs who really like finishing their job and going home and spending family time and watching TV. So that's also something to self-reflect as being part of a, creative people. But
we've only got 1 minute left, according to this.
5 extra minutes.
Oh, okay. I guess I did jump off grid in lots of different ways, like you say. But I actually find my piece really boring when I go and look at it in the gallery, and I kind of think, oh, it's so embarrassing how boring I used to be. It's quite colourful, but I'm looking at it on that screen, you can't see it up there. It does bore me to tears, and I think that, because when I became a recovering data collector, I really thought hard about what sort of work I wanted to make, what sort of artist I wanted to become, and what sort of experiences I wanted to create for an audience. And so now I create much more. I organise events, and I bring people together, and I create sort of convivial spaces, because I'm thinking much more about, I guess, maybe what the world needs more than what I was giving it before. And I guess cutting out the middleman and just creating an environment for people to interact with each other. So it's totally, I guess, off-grid now.
Emily? Hello. Is there any other questions or comments going? There's one over here.
I was thinking about the kind of idea of being an embodied artist, or the fact that, especially Ellie, you've kind of been having embodied your work. And I'm actually from a dance background, and I find it kind of weird to hear, yeah, I was totally in the dance world for a long time, and then you never leave your work, because you're in your work, and you know, being at a dance school, what you eat is regulated and how you're expected to look and everything like that, and it's very different. And I've actually done some work with strip clubs, and I always think that there's a lot of parallels between the kind of selling of artworks and the buying of lap dances, for a lot of different reasons. But I was wondering if there was a kind of a time, like, I mean, I'm English, I know that it's rare to go straight from school to being an artist, and I was wondering if there was a time when you could kind of recognize that you'd really embodied the artist's body that you were going to live in and have all these creative thoughts at 3 o'clock in the morning, and yeah, if there was a time when that happened for you. Maybe, especially Ellie, but the other two.
That's a very good question. I mean, I guess I count myself as becoming an artist when I left art school. It's just 2001, so... But I think it is something, you know, you do grow in confidence, and actually the more shit you've done in the past that you can reflect on, the more sense of identity you have. And actually that's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about in terms of how work shapes our identity. And if you were to cease that work, then you essentially kind of disappear, or you have no sense of who you are. So I think it's been a slow process, but I guess I'm very interested in like this holistic way of being, which again relates to my new hero in that film, and how you can join up the mind and body and see that every little decision that you're making in your life is actually affecting.
But then I would also like to say that you were talking about your social media, like when I did it as a human being. So you're referring to when you had a timeline. But then you're also making this bring back British Railway as an anonymous face. And I just wondered, I thought that was a funny kind of dichotomy, that you had this very self-analytical work, and yet your use of social media is masked, or I don't know, I wondered about that as well, how you felt those two.
Yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of contradictions that I need to try to iron out. It's my lifelong mission. But yeah, I guess like becoming a bit more anonymous was part of my rehabilitation process. Like becoming less self-absorbed was at the same time becoming like horrendously even more self-absorbed. But you know, trying to do things that just weren't about me.
Right.
Who's got the last burning question apart from him? Yeah, he can come after if there's another question. Emily, I was just wondering whether you might like to say a few words, please. Would you? Yeah.
Sam, after your kinetica moment, I watched you outside with your setup, with your knitting machine, and I wonder whether you feel like you've made it now that you're selling your labour in public and that people have bought it.
I'm not sure. I'm very pleased to be here. It's kind of a good sign that I'm doing something right. If someone's paid for my flight and giving me some money to be here, again, it probably doesn't translate to having made it financially. Actually, I think I've spent too much money on coffee and beer. But it's really nice to be in a position where I can run a workshop and get paid for it. Although it was hard work. Someone said you looked stressed and a bit sad. It's because there's a lot of things to juggle. Yeah. So.
I think I meant a little bit more. It seemed a little bit more performative watching you perform your labour. Yeah,
I think knitting. The more I've done it, it is a very performative thing because people come and watch and it is interesting. And then I tend to feel like I have to take on the character to kind of explain to the audience and explain to the person why we're doing this, what's happening, what I kind of want them to think about, as well as something's going on. Also how the machine works. Yeah, so I have a few ideas about how to maybe push machine knitting as a kind of performative thing perhaps involving cage fighting. I'm not sure. Anything that kind of brings the adrenaline up to what is usually thought of as quite a steady, boring activity.
Rob really would love to say something. Yeah, can you have a microphone? While you're giving him the microphone, I'm just going to say 2 points of information. One is that there is a great book, or a catalogue book, called Time and Motion, which they've sold out at the bookshop. But I'm really pleased with it, and Emily edited it. It's a collaboration with the Royal College of Art and Jeremy Myerson Creative Exchange, and it's got some good bits of writing in it, and it also documents some of the artwork, and I guess that's available on the internet. And then the other thing is that if you are in the vicinity, and that's obviously relative, but if you're anywhere near Liverpool, on March the 5th we open an exhibition called Group Therapy, Mental Distress in a Digital Age. And there are many themes that run through this, that feed into that exhibition, working with a number of new artists and commissions, many of the artists of which acknowledge, as do the curators, that they are suffering from some form of mental health issue, as we probably all are. So we'd welcome you in Liverpool to see that show, March the 5th onwards. Okay, Rob Refrene.
Yeah, my name is Rob. I am a curator. I have to admit it, and I'll be there, Mike. Yeah, just to say that I'm interested in this notion about just going back to bring back British Rail. As a curator, I did invite Ellie to be part of a panel about the future of transport. And it's interesting, because I was just thinking generally about citizen culture, people like the mayor of Bogota, who actually brought artworks brought laws making art necessary and things like that. And thinking about my conversation with Ellie, where I said, I want you to come and talk about this, your art project, Bring Back British Rail. And immediately you said, it's not an art project, it's a political campaign. So I'm interested in that jump where an artist stops being an artist and says, it's not art, it just isn't art. Is it?
Well, that's De Ching's point, because De Ching is living his life. Yeah, and of course he chose to call himself an artist for a period of time, and then he retired as an artist. There isn't a distinction, is there?
I think it's a transition, myself, an interesting transition. It's a moment floating in time, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more contradictions in my life the more I open my mouth. Damn. But yeah, I guess because I was talking both about creating distinctions, and I guess creating the campaign was in lots of ways a critique of the limits of art to affect social change. So it was a way of saying, well, art's never going to do it, so how the hell are we going to get our railways back into public ownership? So it was very important that I created that distinction because I wanted it to be effective. And we have, I think, I'm obviously very involved in it and answering emails all the time, but forced that onto the political agenda over the last 5 years in the UK. People are talking about it a lot more often. And so it was important to create distinctions, but at the same time, the fact that I run the campaign is it forms my identity as an artist. The fact that I have this split personality where I'm spending half my time as an activist and half my time as an artist, that is my identity as an artist. So I both tried to put things in boxes and tried to have this completely holistic approach, which is probably also going to end in tears.
Do you call it a day? Has anyone got a last word? One word?